Oops, you caught me drinking on the job. My name is Sam Vaknin. Rings a bell? Can you complete the following sentence? And I am the author of? Yes, you got it right this time. Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. I'm also a professor of psychology in various universities, and I focus on the most amazing personality disorders ever, Cluster B, dramatic or erratic personality disorders. And today, I'm going to focus on a much neglected topic, something that is confused and conflated by self-styled experts online who shall remain unnamed. No, you're not going to drag me that low into the mud to name names. I'm not going to tell you who these self-styled experts are, but they know. And also confused and conflated by academics and scholars in the literature. So we will plunge right in. Syndromes, symptoms, behaviors which appear to be forms of pathological narcissism, even narcissistic personality disorder, but actually are not. Some behaviors, some psychodynamic processes, they look like artifacts of narcissism gone awry, adult narcissism, but they're not. And today I will review 4 of these. I will start with serial idealizers and anxious people pleasers, and I will continue to addicts and people with borderline personality disorders. Altogether, very pleasant company, the kind you want to spend your life with and around. Let's start with serial idealizers. Serial idealizers are people who tend to idealize literally everyone. They go through brief sexual episodes or micro relationships at a dizzying speed. These kind of people, the serial idealizer, instantly and counterfactually idealize a date, a random stranger they had just met. They idealize by imputing to and imposing on the stranger or the date or the acquaintance or the colleague or a distant family member, they attribute to them, they project on them a concoction, a cocktail of traits and behaviors, alleged traits and behaviors. You see, the stranger or the first date or the distant relative or the neighbor, the new neighbor or whoever, they serve as a blank screen. And the serial idealizer projects a movie onto this blank screen. Sometimes the serial idealizer idealizes a group of people, several men altogether, several women altogether. And always the serial idealizer converts in his or her mind these perfect strangers into potential mates or future friends. Sometimes within minutes from a chance encounter, serial idealizers construct a one-sided, fantastic narrative. And not only do they construct a narrative in their mind, but they act in reality as though this narrative were 100% true and tried. So it's a very bizarre, very intricate, very intriguing process. The serial idealizer goes to a bar, goes to a club, goes to a workplace, moves into a new apartment, and comes across new people, individuals or groups. And then the serial idealizer instantly, on the first meeting of the encounter, comes up with a story, a piece of fiction incorporating the serial idealizer and this new acquaintance. And this piece of fiction, this storyboard, this storyline, this HBO or Netflix serial, in this creative endeavor, the serial idealizer and the new guy or the new girl, they're lovers, they're intimate partners, they're mates, they're best friends, they're forever. And yes, within the first minute or two of the acquaintance. This is a shocking transition. Narcissists, for example, also create elaborate fantasies and incorporate in these fantasies other people. I have several videos dedicated to the issue of shared fantasy in narcissism, first described by Sander in 1989. But it takes the narcissist a few weeks, sometimes a few months, to construct the intricate and elaborate storyboard, the intricate and elaborate movie called the shared fantasy, while the serial idealizer does it in a few minutes. Both the narcissist and the serial idealizer behave as though the fantastic narrative is not fantastic and is not a narrative. Both of them behave and act as though the narrative or the fantasy are 100% reality. And in this sense, of course, both of them have impaired reality testing. But in the case of the serial idealizer, the fantasy has several functions which are not typical of the narcissist. First of all, with the serial idealizer, the first goal of the fantasy is to legitimize ego-dystonic or socially unacceptable sex acts or sexual choices or sex with strangers. So the serial idealizer doesn't feel comfortable with having sex with total strangers within 1 hour or 2 hours. She doesn't feel comfortable having group sex with several total strangers simultaneously. She doesn't feel comfortable being subjected to certain sex acts which are more typically associated with intimate partnership. And so she feels, all in all, she feels bad. It's a bad experience. She feels ego-dystonic. She feels discomforted. So the fantasy is there to try to counter the ego-dystony, to legitimize the socially unacceptable sex acts, sexual choices, to make sex with strangers fine, to make group sex acceptable, and to make behaviors which should be reserved for an intimate relationship, sexual behaviors which should be the remit and the realm and the kingdom of intimacy, legitimizes using or applying these behaviors to total strangers. This is the first function, legitimizing essentially misconduct, sexual misconduct or extreme sexual behaviors. The second function of the fantasy of the serial idealizer is to make the serial idealizer feel good, feel loved, feel accepted, feel wanted, feel liked by the stranger, by the acquaintance. So within the fantasy, the serial idealizer feels that he has some connection with a sexual partner, that he has some connection with a new acquaintance or the stranger or the new friend or the new neighbor, that it's a friendship, that it's a romantic relationship, that it's budding intimacy. And this, of course, feels good. So it creates ego-syntony. That's the second function of the fantasy. It is a form of self-deception. I am sleeping with this stranger because he is actually my intimate partner. I'm doing this, I'm having group sex because I want to be loved and accepted by the group. I am behaving this way or that way. I'm being dysregulated. I'm being unboundaried, without personal boundaries. I'm even committing crimes because I want to be wanted. I want to be accepted. I want to belong. I want to be liked. And the third function of the fantasy of the serial idealizer is to facilitate bonding and attachment should the fiction be reciprocated and become a shared fantasy. Once in a blue moon, the serial idealizer comes across a narcissist or comes across another serial idealizer, and then they jointly create a fantasy, which is of course a shared fantasy. The serial idealizer may attempt to compulsively recreate the experiences, hoping for better outcomes with the same partners or with different ones. And this is of course known as repetition compulsion. Like the narcissist, the serial idealizer is interacting with an internal object, not with a real sex partner, not with a real interlocutor, not with a real date. The serial idealizer creates and introjects, creates an object, an avatar, a representation, a symbolic stand-in, internalizes it, and continues the interaction with this internalized object. This way, she avoids the emotional costs of rejection. Serial idealizers will tell you, I couldn't care less what a stranger whom I will never see again thinks about me. I couldn't care less if this stranger with whom I'm going to spend only one night rejects me. So the internalization of the other party serves to create a feeling of control, and the control ameliorates pain, rejection, humiliation, and the pangs of abandonment and yearning. It is fantasy, internal object, control, pain aversion or pain avoidance. This is the chain. Inevitably and almost invariably, reality painfully diverges from the fantastic yarn. And this divergence, this disparity, this abyss between reality and fantasy, this justifies moving on with minimal heartbreak to the next target. It even justifies cheating if the serial idealizer is in a committed relationship. Let's move on to another group of people who closely imitate some types of narcissists. People pleasing or people pleasers. People pleasing is sometimes a life strategy intended to ameliorate extreme generalized anxiety. The world is perceived as hostile or frustrating, and the only defense is to be liked, to be loved, to be accepted by other people, potential enemies. If other people are predators, you want them to like you, you want them to love you, you want to be accepted by them, whether they are individuals or whether they are collectives or groups of people. So people pleasing is an attempt to reduce the anxiety of the unknown, to reduce anxiety, anticipatory anxiety, anxiety pertaining to bad things that people can do to you. The only protection against these bad things is to get people to like you, to please people. Anxiety-driven people pleasers have no personal boundaries. They would do anything. They would agree to everything, just in order to belong. They want to be treated in a way that will ameliorate their underlying anxiety. So they agree to be treated as an objectified sex slave in one-on-one or in group settings. They agree to be verbally abused, emotionally abused, physically abused. They let themselves be taken advantage of and exploited financially and otherwise.